Welcome to the Reasons to Reason podcast. I'm your host and captain, Illegality. This is the show that's going to talk about all the things we're not supposed to: God, religion, and politics. So strap in, prepare to get offended, and maybe, just maybe, our nation can learn how to reason again. Thanks for joining us for another episode. Got a fun one for you. I got my buddy here, Lucas Fuksa, who's an attorney. He's been on a couple other episodes, and as I promised in the last episode, I was going to bring him on to kind of talk about the legal issues around the drag queen fiasco that we had a few weeks ago in front of Park Ridge Town Hall. Grown men dressed as women dancing provocatively in front of children for money. Absurd as it seems, that's what happened, and now we're going to, obviously there's a moral element to that, but then we're going to just talk about the legal element and how our elected officials are not even adhering to the very law that they're elected to adhere to. So we're going to discuss a little bit about what is the real issue, because distorters and perverters of speech want to twist it and make it something it's not. He's going to speak to the legal argument, and we're just going to try to have a sane conversation and allow you guys to hear what's really going on, and then maybe hopefully spread this around, because I know there's a lot of people that are upset about it, and they go to the town hall to make their public comment. And what we're going to bring to light is here, that's not going to get anywhere, because you're making the assumption that these people care about what's truth and what's just. They don't. They care about power. And the current people that are on that council just won an election. And if we had that election today, they would probably win. Why? Because nobody knows what happened and nobody knows who's behind it. So we're going to try to bring that to light. Luke's going to bring his legal expertise, a little bit of history, and we'll just see where the conversation goes. So without further ado, here you go, Luke.
Thank you, Sal. Glad to be here again. This whole topic that is a concern about not really the specific focus on drag shows, but to me, there's more of a concern about the type of propaganda and other topics that can be used to persuade, especially our most innocent, which is children. And we have to determine now, not really specifically on a drag show, but how far much further can this be taken to affect our kids. And, we were discussing before we started the LGBTQ initiatives of religion. You had stated that they are. I agree with you. One thing that we didn't discuss, and why I could make it even a stronger point, is look at our Park Ridge Community Church, right? What do they promote primarily with the flag in front of their church?
I would say pride, which if you read the Bible, God hates pride. So that place is not preaching the word of God, it's preaching a man-made religion, which LGBTQ seems to be a pillar of.
Right. And so when you look at it as a religion, then you look at the laws, and on the most general, high-level basis, there's obviously separation of church and state. So what I would stand for, and I think...
Let's be more specific, because that's not the words that actually appear. It's that the state shall not establish a religion in the First Amendment, which is what the argument I feel like people are missing, is that public funds are used to promulgate this in our libraries, in our schools, in our public spaces, and that's the argument. You don't want to judge my belief on that, and it's not really my belief, it's what I believe God says, but that's not the argument. It's that your religion has no place being funded by public money.
Exactly. The case law then takes these laws that are written by our founding fathers and determines how it's applied, right? So I don't think you would be okay with our Park Ridge City Council promoting public events that are aligned with a specific ideology, right? Just like Catholicism, because that would go against using public funds to promote a religion.
100%.
I don't think this is any different, right? Or allowing access to a public forum, which is the City Hall steps. Drag in particular, there's a lot of arguments for why this is wrong and should not be allowed. The first one we just talked about is the ideology is based on a religion. Whether, a religion, and people may say, well, that's a ridiculous comment. But look at the case law. Religion is very broad. It's what you believe. It's essentially a belief system.
I'll prove it's a religion, because I don't consider myself religious. I try to look at evidence and come to the conclusion. My definition of religion is a man-made ideology that requires a ton of faith to believe it. So when it comes to this, the idea that men can be women, women can be men, or there's more than two genders, no science supports any of that. Despite what anyone wants to say, the liars, the deceivers, the perverters of speech, that's not scientifically true. So in order for me to believe that, you require me to suspend my trust in reality and believe your religion. It is very much a religion. It's much more religious than I believe, which is God created the heavens and the earth.
Now, besides the religious argument, we have to look at the moral aspects of these things, right? The contrast to having a drag show would be having scantily clad females on the city hall steps, also taking dollars from children like you would at a strip club. Now, I'm not saying anything far-fetched because there's video evidence of children giving dollar bills to these drag performers. This could only be blamed on adults, right? On the parents, or are otherwise so ideologically blinded that they throw their morality out the window in pursuit of that ideology, which in this case is pride.
And an important nuance to make is, look, these parents are entitled to have their children engage in that. I mean, I believe in this country, and they're entitled to indoctrinate them with whatever religion they see fit. My problem is, though, Marty, if this is so important to you and so near and dear to your heart, why not open up your backyard? Or why not get some of your fellow comrades to have this festival in their backyard? Public funds should not be used to promulgate this religion. Secondarily, public spaces should be free of anything that I have the right as well to not be subjected to. And I don't think this isn't a homophobic thing. See, this is how they twist. These are the deceivers. This is a Saul Alinsky nonsense tactics that I covered in the last episode. Because I don't want to see grown men dressed as women dancing provocatively in front of children, that makes me a homophobe. No. So keep your your words for yourself. Apply them to yourself. Look in the mirror.
Are you looking for an affordable Christian education for your children that supports your values? For 20 years, Classical Consortium Academy has been doing just that. With 2 days of classical Christian instruction on campus and the rest at home, CCA's hybrid model gives you the best of both worlds, a deep learning and time together. And this fall, CCA is opening a brand new Glenview campus at Cornerstone Church. Discover the education you've been praying for at classicalconsortiumacademy.org. Enroll today.
Sparked something else that came to my mind is when I wrote some things about this drag show on Facebook. You know, the attacks were the typical lazy attacks about I'm a homophobe, I'm against gays. Little do you know, one of my closest friends from college is gay and has been a near and dear friend of mine for years. Nor do people know that I attended a gay wedding, a friend of my wife's who I've known for many years, and was happy to be there and support her in her marriage.
And I'm going to take a stab in the dark. I didn't know this. You just mentioned now. I'd imagine both of these individuals would be also repulsed about what happened in Park Ridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's actually, a gay community that is specifically against these drag shows that are, public exhibitions targeting kids.
And I see the more sinister element in it. And then I want you to give us the history of drag that you brought to light before the interview that I think is interesting to worth noting. The sinister element of it, it's to sow chaos, right? It's to cause division. This is such a 95-5 issue. And the reason why people get elected is because 75% of the people aren't paying attention. And if they heard this, they would get involved and go, no. Look, we could have differences on this or that, but you can't have grown men it's embarrassing that we're even wasting time on it. And that is the purpose, to distract us with this nonsense while we're being robbed blind by the criminal elements of the politicians in this state specifically. That's my view of it. But I want you to give me the history of drag.
Drag originally started when male actors had to perform the role of female characters. It's very well known that this happened with Shakespeare plays for the purpose of entertainment, but in a much different way than it's looked at now, right? Because now it seeks to address prurient interests. And what I mean by that is sexually motivated interests. I don't think there's many people that could dispute that there's some type of sexual content and persuasion aligned with these drag shows.
And let me be really blunt here, and I'm not making any accusations of the performers that were there, but how many times do we have to see that these people that are dancing in front of children turn out to be pedophiles themselves, turn out to have explicit content on their computers of child pornography? Why do I have to deny my common sense to make people feel good? It's a bunch of crap, man. There's enough of the people that are involved in the bad things to know that this is beyond just being accepted. Dance in a club with other adults. Go have a good time.
Right.
I'll come hang out. Leave the kids alone.
Right. And like you said, Marty, you could hold this in your backyard if you're so forward or you think that it's such an important element of Pride Month. But you can hold it on public grounds. And I'll give you a variety of support for that, starting with our own municipal ordinance, the Park Ridge Municipal Ordinance. There's different sections, and the fact that it's addressed in at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different paragraphs of our ordinance means that there's a reason why we should look out for lewd or indecent exhibitions in public, right? So the one section states, any act which endangers public health or results in annoyance or discomfort to the public is unlawful. That's not even requiring much of an argument to whether you feel like drag is prurient or not. This word is discomfort. Certainly, I think a vast majority of people in Park Ridge, where this was located, would find discomfort with a drag show being exhibited to children.
And I'm going to be blunt again. We try to figure out, like, what is the point of this? What is the purpose? Something that, like, most people never in a million years would say, like, this is acceptable. It is to make people uncomfortable, to solicit a response. They wanted people showing up with anti-gay slurs and then go, see, look what we're dealing with. Look at the homophobes. Guess what? That didn't happen. Instead, what's going on is sane adults are going, what are you doing in front of the kids? Leave the freaking kids alone.
Right. Next section, 14-5-6, talks about indecent exposure. It prohibits any person from appearing in indecent or lewd dress or condition in public or conduct oneself in a lewd or lascivious manner. This plainly encompasses public drag performances where attire and conduct are exaggerated for effect, right? Especially in front of kids. Moreover, the definition of obscene states that material is obscene when, and there's a lot of case law on obscenity and what it is, one of which a particular judge stated generally may be harder to find, but I know it when I see it. Mm-hmm. Right? But in this case, in our code, it says, when applying community standards, the dominant theme appeals to prurient interests. Mm. Now, the argument could be made, our community standards are so low that they allow this, right? If you want to take that position, fine, you win. I certainly would think that our community standards wouldn't allow a drag show exhibition for kids.
And here's where democracy comes in and getting involved comes in. As the current electorate says, this is the standard of morality. Because Marty was just reelected, very handedly, by the way. Now, and unless we get people with morality involved and see that this is obviously not an appropriate thing, this is what's the Cicero quote I quoted in the last episode. Power and law are not synonymous. Marty is in power right now. Is he adhering to the law? No. But you know what? If he gets away with it, why can't he? He's doing what he's allowed to get away with. And people got to realize that. And all the public comments in the world aren't going to change anything. You have to share this episode, get people talking and thinking and realizing what's going on, and get involved. That's the answer.
I'm going to mention a couple more quick ordinances here. Section 14-5-11, indecent show. This provision makes it unlawful to present, exhibit, or conduct any indecent show, theatrical, play, motion picture, exhibition, or other form of public amusement or show. I guess the only argument contrary to that would be people saying, well, it's not indecent.
Just like, because we got to provide the alternative, right? So would women dancing provocatively on the steps be indecent? And do we have to do it and then see what happens?
As a straight man, I would think that would be very indecent. Yeah. And it's not something
especially in front of children. And even if children aren't there, in broad daylight and public spaces, I mean, these places used to be considered seedy. That was like the word, the seedy joint, that people would like come in and out with sunglasses because they didn't want to be seen. This is where pride has gotten us. When you celebrate pride, you celebrate your immorality. Now there's no shame. We need shame in society. You should be embarrassed when you're doing these things in front of kids.
So finally, the last section I want to read, which I think is particularly interesting, is and the fact that our own ordinance addresses these things. Section 14.5.9 is labeled audience. The code provides that obscenity must be judged in relation to the expected audience, including, quote, children or other specially susceptible audiences where the content is designed for such viewers. So go ahead and argue to me that drag shows are typically acceptable for audiences with children. If you want to make that argument, I think you
Good luck.
I think good luck, because certainly if the code wasn't designed to address this situation, then you might as well throw it all out.
And again, to power and law. We have laws. We have a lot of laws that protect us. We have a Constitution that's remarkable and gives us remarkable rights that never existed before. And what people in power do that aren't interested in the truth, that are solely interested in power, they essentially ignore the law and see if you'll notice. We saw that during COVID. There were a lot of things we were told, like the word mandate. You're mandated to do this. You were not legally required to do any of these things. But essentially, when it comes down to it, if they could convince you you have no choice, you don't have a choice. And that's what they're doing. And as they continue to degrade our laws and not enforce our laws, then if they want to switch it out 10, 15 years later and take away all this, they probably will get away with it because they're not interested in truth. We need people, whether I agree with them or not, that are interested in the law and in truth, not in power alone.
Sal, we also discussed, how do you address this now, right? Because I know there's been, I wrote a letter that was read at a council meeting, and I know other people have gone there and voiced their opinions. The problem is this is a public comment section of the meeting where the elected officials do not respond. They listen and they don't say anything to it. So one thing is to actually get this on the agenda. But I think the bigger thing is to really inform the constituents, the community, about what is going on. Because I think there's so much ignorance in people not knowing what is actually happening, what is happening in our schools and, our libraries. The only way to make this change is to not elect those people who support these things that are illegal, and we need to educate them. The other thing I wanted to talk about in that regard too, in terms of educating, on the heels of this, there was a SCOTUS opinion, very impactful, that came out last Friday. A Montgomery school district in Maryland, where a number of parents sued to opt their children out of LGBTQ teachings, and the Supreme Court ruled that yes, these children should have an opportunity to opt out of these teachings. Didn't go as far as to say that the schools cannot teach these things, right? Which I think would be the right avenue, because really it's a religion, and I don't want the teachers to teach or promote anything that they feel is based on morality or character, because that should come from the parents. Because my morality may not be the same as your morality. And I would never want you to teach my kids your morality, which I may not agree with, right? So it's, again, reading, writing, arithmetic, right? That's what schools were for.
Funny enough, those are the areas that they're struggling immensely.
Exactly.
Look at the Chicago public schools. Kids can't read, can't write, can't do math. Quite frankly, our great Park Ridge schools, I put that in quotations, for the money we spend, the product has been slipping. If anyone's listening to this that is rolling their eyes because here's the religious wingnuts in their mind. I want to point out the man with the highest IQ recently came out and said that the God of the Bible is God. We had another episode that ChatGPT reasoned that he's God. So stop rolling your eyes and start thinking. If you think you're making better arguments, make them. I'd love to have you on the show, have a conversation, see how smart you are. And the other thing is that they hide behind this thing that people that disagree with the religion are homophobic or whatever. Luke pointed out his friends. I got gay friends too. I've had these conversations. I've had very real conversations about what the Bible says about it, but in love, right? It's not in a judgmental way. But why can't we talk about these things? This is the point of the show.
Sal, I don't have statistics to prove this, but I would bet $1 that the gay community would be against these things.
I would imagine so.
I think this is all promulgated by politicians, by these ideologies, by the fact that anytime you discover a vulnerable class of individuals, whether it be based on race, sexuality, gender, they're going to market to those in order to get vote, to get power, and really for money. Because how much of this funding is going towards those interests?
Yeah, amen. And we talk about these books that are in the library that they would never be sold in a public bookstore. But instead, at our library, they buy 10, 15 copies each, and all the libraries get them. This is a money laundering operation. They take your tax dollars, buy these books. Look at where the authors and the publisher of these books donate their money. It's to one political party. I see it. All right, no one else sees it. I see it. I know the scam. I understand how criminals work, and they take our public money to promulgate a religion, and it is about power. And the argument, like when I spoke up about the library a couple years ago, they made the argument science-based, evidence-based, all this stuff, gender-affirming care. It's all been debunked. There's no such thing. It's criminal behavior, and they're never held accountable. These purple-haired misfits from Northwestern that come in our community, pretend they're smarter than everyone else, and preach this garbage, and got everyone on, pins and needles because they don't want to be called a homophobe. Don't worry to be called a homophobe by a liar. Embrace it. And that's the message to you people out there.
And by the way, for people who think that there was such a show of support for this Pride exhibition with the drag shows, people were essentially bussed in from other communities from the city of Chicago. And this is organized, okay? This is organized by a political agenda, by political groups.
And I saw something in Chicago. I was walking down with work, and they were protesting the bill that was recently signed. There was all these people with signs in front of near the post office. There were more journalists than people with signs, but the way the shot was shot, I could see how they're shooting it. They made it seem like there was hundreds of people there. You're watching a production. You're watching a theater. And yes, these people they bus from community to community, and they go to each one of these events. So yeah, it's important that we point out the lie, that there isn't support for it. And we got to encourage people to get involved. I mean, at the very least, just vote and talk to your neighbor about it. Don't be afraid to talk, but talk truthfully about it. It's not about homophobia. There's no one throwing people off the buildings because they're gay. I don't know anyone. Has anyone actually been shunned or attacked because of their being gay in this community? Give me the example.
So, beginning with the next school year, make sure that if your kids are in public schools, I'm going to make sure my kids opt out of any of these teachings. SEL has been one of them, social emotional learning, that they allow to opt out, but the other teachings we addressed here, LGBTQ based, there was no option for that. I want my children, and I'm going to teach them to accept people for who they are, and I don't want them to be biased or dislike people because of their gender or sexuality. But I don't want, just like I don't want my school district to teach my kids morality. I don't want them to teach them about this as well. It should not be in a school program.
And I'll go further. Look, again, it's a religion. I don't even think they belong in there to be out of. Right? Because it's still public money. It's still our money there being squandered on this stuff. So, but if we're going to have all these opt-in, opt-outs, why not have a curriculum that's the heavily scientific, logical curriculum that demonstrates that obviously the creation was created, all the arguments for it throughout the history, the sound, logical arguments, and present it for the kids to think about. What are you afraid of, religious person that thinks there's 5 genders? Why can't we teach that God made 2 genders? And if you're offended by it, opt your kid out. But we should have the same amount of public money allocated to teach that curriculum.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with that because I would say that should be taught by the parents, and I don't want schools. I think it would be a contradictory view, right? If you're going to say...
I'm not saying it should be there. I'm saying that's the logical conclusion. If you're going to say these should be there and you could opt out, they should all be out.
Well, so what I'm thinking is going to happen if there's enough information about this is that a vast majority of the people would have their kids opt out, and then this will no longer be part of our school programs. I'm hoping strongly that this will happen. The opt-out will maybe last for a year or two, and it'll be an administrative nightmare for the schools, number one, which was part of the arguments that the school district made in the Supreme Court case, that it would be an administrative nightmare, but the court didn't care about that, nor should they. And I think it will be, to the extent that they're going to scrap it altogether.
You would think, or they'll say we need another $500 billion to hire more staff, more political operatives to operate in our schools. That's where I see it going. That's how they deal with it. What are your final takeaways? What are your final words for our audience?
The final takeaways are this. I don't want this to be, again, there's such lazy arguments made by the opposition, homophobia and religious wackos and things like that we've gone over. This is, for me, an issue of parental rights and an issue of children and how I want to raise children, how I want to be the one in control of dictating their morality, their principles, their conscience. And it's a fine line and a slippery slope when you let the government do that.
And I'll prove it to you that it's a slippery slope, because if you said 10 years ago, would we have this, even though we had pride and everyone was fine with the gay pride parade and all that this would happen, people would go, well, come on, Sal, that'll never happen. And what's the next step? It's not going to stop here. It'll continue to get more debased and insane. Look at even the pride parades going on. I think, look, a lot of things, they start off with good intention, but the people that started these things with good intention, they were actually persecuted. You got to get honest and start condemning your own community. Look at the violence that ensues when these parades are over. Chicago's, no one reports it, but the police that worked that event, there's millions squandered down there to clean up violence, people arrested, drug abuse, filth everywhere, and it's city by city. It's not just Chicago, wouldn't it? So let's cover that. Let's cover the whole thing. Let's cover Pritzker walking around, waving the flag, smiling, and let's cover the street covered in filth, garbage, and the business owners that get their businesses vandalized because of this Pride Festival.
One last thing, that if you look at a lot of these ideological movements, they're not about what they're labeled as, okay? Black Lives Matter was not about Black Lives Mattering, okay? Free Palestine is not about freeing Palestine. And Pride is not about sexual orientation and acceptedness within our community. It goes much further than that, much deeper than that. And it's a political movement. It's a political stunt. It's made for a power grab, and it's definitely rooted in money.
Even I cannot add to that. Well stated, Luke. Thanks for joining. Spread this episode. Hope you had a good earful of insightful content, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Sing it!
Thanks for joining us for another episode. I hope I got you thinking and out of your comfort zone. Believe me, the biggest fear your government has is a population that is thinking and talking to one another. So get out there, take a risk, start a conversation, make a friend, and reason with each other. Share the show with someone who you think needs to hear it. I wish you peace and love.